The Pokemon Company could be gearing up for major announcements soon here with a brand new Pokemon Presents announced for February 27th at 6 a.m. PT, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, the Pokemon Company has officially said that the broadcast will feature 20 minutes of, quote, exciting Pokemon news in celebration of Pokemon Day 2023. Now, at previous Pokemon Days, there's been some pretty big games being announced there. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a prediction for what I think, but also why I think that the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance Pokemon titles are going to be announced. Now, before we get into any of the predictions and some of my reasoning for it, I want you guys to take a listen to the announcement message for the Pokemon Presents on Pokemon Day. As you guys can clearly hear right there, it has that classic old school Pokemon Red and Blue theme. That song, to me, that is absolutely a hint that we're going to be seeing some classic Pokemon action. And it seems that the timing is just perfect with Nintendo just announcing the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. Players, fans everywhere have been talking about how they want to see some of these classic games. The Pokemon Company obviously not against putting some of the classic games on a eShop or virtual console service like they've done before on the Nintendo 3DS. So I do think that it's very possible and probably even more likely based on that announcement message, based off of the timing with Nintendo, that we do see Game Boy and Game Boy Advance Pokemon games come over to the platform. So I'm excited for that. I think it'd be pretty cool, especially with Pokemon Home, if you can get them on there somehow and transfer them over, and then even have online play built in. Because remember guys, a lot of you guys don't know this, but with the Nintendo Switch Online, every single game that has multiplayer can be played online in a local PvP type of way. So what I mean by that is that it's not matchmaking. So it's essentially like if you were playing the game right there locally with someone, but it tricks it into thinking that it's online multiplayer. So if you want to play Super Mario Bros, for example, with two people, you can play that even though you pass back and forth, right? You have to do it locally with someone there normally, but you can play that online with Nintendo Switch Online and any other game as well. The N64 games like GoldenEye, other titles that are coming out that have multiplayer, you can play that. Heck, even with the Super Mario Kart, the Super Circuit game on the GBA, you can play that online with your friends. Open up a room, play that online with them. So if the Pokemon games do come over to the Nintendo Switch Online, you will be able to play online with your friends in that type of way, trade, battle, and all of that, which is very exciting because it adds in a feature that Nintendo has never done before for the Pokemon games, at least the classic ones, when they brought them to virtual console services or re-downloading or whatever the case is. So I'm excited for that. Now, what else could be at Pokemon Day? Well, I think there's a number of other things. I think that we're going to get some mobile games, so expect to see some updates to Pokemon Unite or Cafe Mix or Pokemon Masters. But I do think that we could get an announcement of a brand new Pokemon spin-off type of game. So like a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, a Pokemon Ranger, that type of Pokemon title that could be in the works and already done. There was already one game on the Nintendo Switch like that, and that was the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game. And that game actually did fairly well for what it was. A full price remake of one of the other games. I think it sold like 2 million plus copies or so. So I could see the Pokemon Company doing something like that. We still maybe need to get some more information on Detective Pikachu 2 as well. I think that the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC, that's going to be a major part of the presentation. I think we could see something like that as well. Talk about the DLC, maybe get the first footage of that, new stuff happening. But I do want to kind of focus in on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet a little bit, because while DLC is probably expected for it, the one thing that people are going to be looking out for are improvements to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, if you checked out my other video, or if you haven't seen it, I did make a video talking about the improvements. So there is a patch that's scheduled for sometime here in February. I'm guessing it's going to drop on Pokemon Day or around that time. And in there, they said, hey, we're fixing a bunch of bugs. We're also adding a bunch of box features as well, because it needs those box features. We're fixing up a number of other things. but they didn't talk about performance at all. But they also said in there that they are doing other features that they are not listing right now, that they're not going to announce right now. So I'm guessing that some of those features, or maybe an update in terms of what else they're doing to the game to make it run better or add more different things, that is going to be announced at the Pokemon Day. I think they didn't want to spoil it there, or they didn't want to talk about what it was going to be. Even in those patch notes, they talked about reducing the amount of Pokemon walking around or amount of people in the towns when you're battling in order to make things not crash and potentially even run better. So they are making major adjustments to this game. It's just going to be interesting to see exactly how major it's going to be and exactly how they're going to fix some of the performance issues that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has. For those who don't know, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is one of the fastest selling, if not the fastest selling Pokemon game of all time. In a month and a half, it sold 20 million copies plus. It's actually only about 5 million copies away from Pokemon Sword and Shield's entire total. That game came out back in 2019. So Pokemon Sword and Shield is more popular than ever. It is really a massive game. Games, especially exclusives, do not sell like this. Like, you're gonna need a multi-platform game to sell 20 million copies in a month and a half. So the fact that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet did that in a month and a half on the Nintendo Switch shows that this game needs way more time and attention post-launch to fix a lot of the stuff. So the bug fixes are good. Some of the other things that they talked about are good. The box features are good, but we need to see some of those performance fixes as well. And I think that if they're going to be shifting around certain Pokemon, removing people, because that's what causes some of the slowdown and issues in the game. There's a bunch of Pokemon that are around. Even when you're battling, there'll be like 5 or 6 Pokemon huddled around somebody. You don't need all that when you're battling one Pokemon. Now, if you can go from one Pokemon to the next Pokemon like in a quick succession battle or something like that, then it would make sense. But it really doesn't make any sense to have a bunch of people and Pokemon walking around right in the middle of your actual battle right there. So remove those out of the way so you can get things running better and smoother most of the time. So we'll see how that goes. I'm excited and I'm looking forward to it. And this is my dark horse pick for something crazy or something new Pokemon Legends content, whether it's a new Pokemon Legends area or a new Pokemon Legends DLC or a new Pokemon Legends game. I think that we could see something from Pokemon Legends at this Pokemon Presents, whether it's a tease, something like that, because Pokemon Legends was by far one of the more successful products that they've done. It's a really good game and it's sold really well on the Nintendo Switch. So I expect Pokemon Legends to get something, but we will see. It might not be here, but I think in the future we could absolutely see at a Pokemon Day or a Nintendo Direct or something, probably a Pokemon Day, like the original Pokemon Legends I think was announced at a Pokemon Presents as well. So they've announced some big stuff here. Yeah, there's some boring stuff with mobile and all that, but there's also been some big announcements as well. So what are you looking forward to Pokemon Day? And of course, if you want more information on Pokemon or what I think about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, some of the stuff that I've talked about, there will be more videos that you can check out. There'll be a link in the description, but I do want to talk about one more thing when it comes to this video, and that is the redacted Nintendo Switch 2 redacted information that's redacted on their online. So a lot of redacteds. So I do want to talk about this because apparently Nintendo Switch 2, they said, was seemingly leaked online, which I don't think so, because Nintendo has already stated that there is a next-gen Nintendo Switch. They talked about this in their investor meeting like 2 years ago plus. So we already know that Nintendo's working on it. They've already actually informally announced their next generation Switch system and talked about linking accounts and stuff. So that's not really new. But now we have something outside of an investor meeting or whatever the case is talking about this. So this article was everywhere, but I picked it up from ComicBook. Now, the hint at Nintendo Switch Online being carried over to the next Nintendo console comes the way of the United Kingdom's Competition and Markets Authority. The CMA has published a series of documents pertaining to the potential acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft. In one of these documents, the CMA makes note that Nintendo Switch Online is only available via, quote, Nintendo Switch services and redacted information. Quote, Nintendo Switch Online has been excluded from our shares as Nintendo's cloud gaming service is very limited. Nintendo's cloud gaming service is only available on the Nintendo Switch device and redacted information, reads the CMA document. But guys, it's obviously the next thing that they're talking about here. It's probably the next system, which the CMA probably learned about through Activision Blizzard or even Nintendo during the investigation of all of this happening, because you do have to put in actual information on what's going on. Now, why it's redacted and all of that stuff, obviously it's sensitive information and it's not announced yet, so the CMA is not going to leave that on there. Often in some of these court documents and things, you will have information redacted all the time where it's a need to know basis. So if you're a party and you're looking for that information, it might be redacted on there, even if you're involved with it when it comes down to it. I've seen court documents, or at least a lot of them in my time. So yeah, there are redacted informations, and there can be information that's redacted with court documents and you're literally involved. Like, you could be like the other person on the other side. They'll be like, oh, redacted what that person said, redacted, blanked out. So this is nothing new to me. As I've looked through court documents, man, I've been through a few things, so I understand that part of it. So really, at the end of the day, guys, it does seem like Nintendo has the next Nintendo Switch and it's going to migrate over the online accounts and everything, but that's not anything new or crazy to me. Now, once again, I know this picture has been shared a million times. People are starting to pick it up. I know my friend RGT made fun of people sharing it and saying that people are misunderstanding it, but there really isn't anything to misunderstand. Like, if you read the information on there, it shows a graph. It shows the Nintendo Switch. It shows Nintendo accounts, and it clearly shows on the graph that they're gonna have their Nintendo accounts and they're gonna migrate that information to the next system. They even say in their information on there wanting to build long-term relationships and migrating accounts to what they're doing next. So it's really not rocket science here. It's very obvious that they are going to be having the next Nintendo Switch 2, whatever it's called, and have your Nintendo accounts and probably have backwards compatibility and probably have your games that are already on there. That's probably what's going to happen. Nintendo has done backwards compatibility before. Yes, they have not been great on the account stuff because their systems for the accounts has been terrible when it comes to like the Wii, and then when it comes to the Wii U, they were rebuilding things over and over, and sometimes you can transfer over, but maybe it costs a little bit of money to do so. They haven't had a solid solution until now with the Nintendo accounts, and they've already talked about this, like I said, a number of years ago. Plus they have the NSO that's building steam. They have people paying monthly services for it. So if you're paying monthly and you have the infrastructure to support that with the new NPLN, it makes absolutely zero sense to shut all that down. Obviously, you're not going to be making that money anymore if you're building something completely new, and you're not really going to be in a good position going to the next generation once you've built up what you're doing right now, which the NSO has taken all generation to build up to where people feel that it's valuable enough to spend the $50 on the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack or to spend on the base Nintendo Switch Online. There was a lot of pushback to both of those. Even at the $20 tier, you get like a bunch of NES and Super Nintendo games. People were pushing back on that and saying that it's not good enough, even at that, for like $1 something a month for it. So I do feel that they're not going to lose all of that to start over all again when they're making millions upon millions of dollars on that. So it doesn't make any sense, and once again, they've already talked about it there. So that redacted information could be them talking about the next Nintendo Switch, right? But that information obviously was redacted, so we don't know exactly what it says, but I think we all kind of know what it says there. So yes, Nintendo Switch 2 is coming. Obviously, it's going to have Nintendo Switch Online. It's going to have your account with everything there. So we'll see exactly how everything shakes out. In terms of the Nintendo Switch 2 itself, when do I think it's going to be announced? I think that the Nintendo Switch 2 will be announced sometime in 2023, probably the end of the year, in a special video like they did with the Nintendo Switch back in 2016, and then we get an early launch in 2024, maybe even a March, April type of launch, spring near the fiscal year end, and then have that momentum with games. Get those games ready. Get the next big Monolith Soft game ready. Get the next big Mario Kart ready. Get the next big Mario ready. Whatever you're gonna get when it comes to different titles, your teams are already working on them. A lot of the Switch Nintendo developers have moved on to the next thing. A lot of Nintendo's first-party teams are moving on, have already moved on, have released their last big titles on the Nintendo Switch. So the Switch will still be supported. I think there's going to be backwards compatibility. I think there might be some cross-gen games. I think some Japanese developers will still support it. There's still money to be made, and the shop's going to be online. Everything's going to be good there. I think you're going to be able to access that on the new Switch because there's still, like I said, plenty of money to be made. People are still buying Switch. It's still selling good. And I think that Tears of the Kingdom is still going to push Switches throughout the year. So I don't think that there's really going to be any change when it comes to that. And then basically they're going to transition very naturally into the next generation with these big games and announce it. Nintendo just can't announce the system with just third-party stuff. We saw how that worked out with the Wii U. Bad idea. don't do that. So I think that they're going to have their games ready to go. Then, of course, third parties will fill in as needed or fill in when they want to fill in. Very similar to how like the first year of the Nintendo Switch was. A lot of first party stuff at the beginning, then third parties kind of filled in as the system sold better and as they announced it in Nintendo Directs and stuff like that. So I think we can see a very similar situation with the Nintendo Switch too. But what do you guys think about all this here when it comes down to it? Got my previous videos talking about what I think Nintendo's going to do at PAX. Looks like they're going to have a big Tears of the Kingdom blowout and more. So that video will be on the page here and also link in the description. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. We'll see you for the next video. Peace.